As general consumers think about purchasing internal combustion or ICE vehicles versus electric vehicles or EVs, a big question, of course, is the sticker price. And always there has been a premium associated with purchasing an EV versus an ICE car. But as Cathie Wood and Ark Invest have noted recently in their Big Ideas 2023 presentation, EVs are now at price parity versus the average cost of a car in the United States. But wait, it gets even better than that. A Tesla Model 3 is now cheaper than a bunch of models of Camrys. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I filmed the bulk of this video last night, but I want to touch on something that came out yesterday evening after I had filmed this thing. The images are from Drive Tesla Canada. I'm not sure where they're actually taken, whether they're in California or Canada. But anyway, these are pictures of the beta versions, the beta builds of the Cybertruck, which are sort of pre-production versions of the Cybertruck out in the wild. And a couple of things. Number one, Elon Musk responded to one of these by saying that the mirrors, because that's the big deal with these new trucks, is that they have side mirrors, and it's actually a different shape than the, a pre-build version, whatever it was. So the original Cybertruck, if you don't recall, had no mirrors at all. It was very clean on the outside. But of course, in the United States, you are required to have side mirrors, and they have to be physical mirrors. They can't be cameras and things like that. So anyway, the side mirrors are a requirement to sell the trucks in the United States at the very least. And therefore, you see the side mirrors, and there's a new evolution of them. But Elon Musk responded to this tweet by saying that the side mirrors will be user removable, and then I assume you would use the side cameras if you wanted to. So assuming you weren't pulling a very wide load behind you, in which case you actually do need actual physical mirrors that are outside of where the truck is so that you can see around the thing that you're hauling. If you don't, you could probably get away with just using the side cameras instead, and that would make the truck more aerodynamic, which is, it's actually a really big deal. Side mirrors are actually massively inefficient because if you think about them, they're a shape with a flat backside, and that flat backside causes a massive amount of turbulence. So they actually are a huge problem for the aerodynamic efficiency of vehicles. But anyway, you can remove them both for the aesthetic look and also for the efficiency. I think I will end up removing them for the efficiency purposes because, I don't know, I'm old. I'm used to looking at side mirrors, so it will take some retraining to look at the screen instead to see the side mirrors. But the second part about this is seeing it in the wild, you can see just how darn big this truck is. I mean, if you see the person in this photograph with the truck, she is like much smaller than the top of the truck. It's kind of shocking. And then you also see that there's a huge number. I think there's 8 tires in the back of the bed of the Cybertruck. So this thing is really large. And that's the other piece of this. Again, I've seen it in person. I saw it at the Gigafactory, Texas, and I was like, wow, this thing is big, but it's a little difficult to see when you don't have context. It's just sort of sitting there in the middle of a giant hall. So you don't really get the contextual thing about seeing like people and especially road objects next to it. And when you do see it out on the road and how big it is, it really is shocking just how large this truck is. So it's going to be quite the adventure when we eventually get our Cybertruck and park it in the driveway. It's definitely going to be one of those things that people will not pass by the house without noticing this thing. And it's definitely not going to fit in our garage either. I mean, maybe if we took both cars out and sort of parked it in sideways, it might work, but I don't think that thing is fitting in there with another vehicle. So anyway, this is definitely a live in the driveway type of vehicle, and it's definitely something that will attract attention. So anyway, I just wanted to tack this on to the main part of the video, but now on with the video. So I'm going to start with this particular page from Ark Invest's very extensive Big Ideas 2023 report. I will probably do some other stuff about artificial intelligence and maybe some other elements of the report, but for today, I just want to focus on this one particular slide here. So you can see here that EVs with greater than 300-mile range, which, for the most part was only really Tesla. You can see that on the right over here, this sort of teal color, I guess, is Tesla's, and how many different versions they had, how many models they had that were over 300 miles range. And until 2021, when Ford released the Mach-E, they pretty much had the entire market to themselves, at least in the United States. And then you can see other manufacturers kind of have, jumped on board in the past year or so. So again, something like the Chevy Bolt or the Nissan Leaf wouldn't count because they had very much lower mileage than 300 miles range. So that's the basic idea here is, you want a car that's competitive with ICE cars, not a little toy. Obviously, the Wuling Mini that's made in China, that's only $5,000. That's a toy. It's not comparable to an ICE car, at least in the United States. So anyway, that's the metric that they're using. And you can see that the cost was very high in 2017. It was 135,000 or so, something along those lines, and that it has dropped off a cliff, and it has now become something where we've seen the other ICE cars have actually inflated in price, and that's what you're seeing, and EVs have remained flat or actually gone down somewhat. And you can see also that their prediction here in the future is that they're going to be, you know, taking a nosedive much more rapidly downward. So if you're familiar with Wright's law, which talks about the percentage, the amount that some product reduces in cost to manufacture versus every doubling. So if you make 1,000 of something and it costs you $100 to manufacture each unit, and then you make 2,000, you've doubled the amount. And if you lose like 28%, if you reduce the cost by 28% because you've doubled it, that means the manufacturer cost has gone down to $72 rather than $100. And as it turns out, EVs have reduced in cost by about a factor of 28% per every doubling of their manufacture. But the thing about Wright's law is, and with most things in the real world, you don't get an exactly even reduction over time. And so what we've seen is we see this thing that looks very flat. So you can see from 2016, that was very expensive. It was the Model S, I assume, at that point, or maybe it was the Model X. But anyway, it was very expensive, and then it just dropped off a cliff when the Model 3 was introduced. But then it's remained relatively flat and only recently started to go down again. But the way most things work in the real world is that they are lumpy. So essentially what you get is you get, it'll go down drastically, then it'll stay flat for a while, then it'll go down drastically again. So you don't get this exactly even march of everything. And certainly, especially with 2020, 2021, and 2022, all of the insanity that happened, you can see that over that time, especially in 2022, internal combustion engine vehicles inflated pretty radically over that time. So there is part of the thing that's not being modeled here is the fact that a dollar is worth less now than it was in 2017. So some of this here, the flatness of the curve, a little bit of it is mitigated by the fact that inflation is happening and at a relatively increased rate of speed right now. And so that's forcing the cost of vehicles up. So flat is actually good. It actually means effectively it's going down. But the bigger thing to remember is that, all of these laws that specifies that everything falls down at a very even amount, every single doubling, that's not really the way it works. It's much more lumpy than that. So what Ark is predicting here is that we've had the big drop from 2016 to 2017, and then it's been flat for the last, 6 years or so, 5 or 6 years, but they're predicting another major drop this year. And if you haven't seen my talk with Dr. Scott Walter, you can check it out up here if you're interested. We talk at some length about Project Highland and the Tesla Model Tau. That is thanks to Connecting the Dots. I think that's a wonderful name for this product. Anyway, check out that video. But that vehicle and also the Tesla Model 3, the redo of the Model 3, which will likely be the first product of the Highland project, the Highland project more than likely being about revamping the factory to manufacture cars at half the cost that they were before. So what we could see here, and you can see Ark is giving an indication of this, is that they're expecting that big jump to happen soon, 2023 or 2024 or something like that. So we're going to get flatness for a while, and then it's going to drop off the cliff. But at this point, you're probably saying like, okay, so that's price parity in the future, and this is average cost. This is an average cost of $40,000. And compared to this, you can see that the least expensive Tesla Model 3 is less than the average cost. The average cost being somewhere in the mid 40s. I think it's about $44,000 right now for an average cost of a vehicle. But that's not necessarily the best comparison because, of course, every car you sell, every Lamborghini or something like that you sell drives the average cost up quite a bit. So that's not perhaps the best metric. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to compare a Toyota Camry, which is a very basic car. It's, the kind of thing that lots of people get into. It's not the most popular car in the world anymore, but it's one of the most popular. In fact, I think the RAV4 was actually the most popular car last year. But anyway, that's more of an SUV type shape, and the Camry is more of a sedan. So I think that's a better comparison with the Model 3. But what I'm going to show you here is that the Tesla Model 3 standard range is actually as cheap as many models of the Camry. So let's start with the 2023 Camry XLE, which is about the middle of the road Camry. You can get much more expensive versions. You can also get cheaper. You can get into a Camry for $26,795, I think, which is still objectively significantly cheaper than the Model 3. But I don't think that's the best comparison to make because it's a pretty stripped down car. And so there are things that you're not getting with that version. So anyway, if you're super committed to get the cheapest Camry, yes, you can still get it cheaper than a Tesla Model 3 by a significant margin. version. But if you want to get a decent car, decently specced out, it's going to cost you starting price of about $30,970. And then to make this an apples to apples comparison, it only makes sense to add the navigation upgrade package with options, which basically gives you a bunch of ADAS stuff, right? So it's assisted driver things. So the Tesla Model 3, even if you don't get full self-driving and stuff, it comes standard with basically the same package. So it makes the most sense to compare these two models, I believe. And also, this is the lesser of the expensive ones. This is the XLE. The XLE hybrid is $3,000 more. So the cost you've got here, the MSRP of $35,520 and then $36,615 with delivery fees and all of that kind of stuff, is actually, that would be about $38,520 if you purchased it as a hybrid version and you wanted to get better gas mileage than this version. All right, so now let's look at the Model 3 on Tesla's website. This is so much easier. The Camry is a pain in the ass. Like when you start going into the configurator, there's like a billion different options and it's really hard to track down an exact price. I very much appreciate the fact that Tesla has just a couple of options here. Also notice Lars from Best in Tesla just noted this, and I hadn't really been paying that much attention, but you can't get the long range version of the Model 3 anymore, which super indicates to him and to me as well that that is going to be the first car that's going to be Project Highlanded. So it's going to be a new version of the vehicle that is going to be radically redesigned. Under the hood, it might look very, very similar, you know, on the exterior, but it's likely to be very, very redesigned under the hood. And that is going to be put back in here once they announce the product. Again, the likely time that they will announce this product is March 1st at the investor event. And I think that they'll probably be trying to produce the car within just a few months. So basically they'll do the announcement and take orders immediately for the vehicle, because they're not going to want that Osborne effect where they announce something and they say it's going to come out in 2024 and then people will stop buying the Model 3 altogether. So anyway, that's a reasonable prediction at this point. But anyway, let's just ignore that. Let's just look at the rear-wheel drive Model 3. You can see that it's $43,990, which if you look back here, you're like, wait, that's significantly more than the Camry, right? That's, you know, $35,000, and then with the delivery fees, it's $36,600 or something like that. But wait, if we move up here, $7,500 federal tax credit, right? And if we subtract that amount from $43,990, you get $36,490 for this vehicle effectively. Now, again, if you're somebody who makes a ton of money and you don't qualify, then you have to pay the $43,990. But also, if you make that kind of money, you're probably not interested in the base model Model 3 anyway. So this isn't as, you know, important of a comparison for you. But anyway, for most of the people in the United States, this car effectively will cost $36,490. And you can see, yeah, I mean, if you include the delivery fees, it's actually less than that. If you don't, it's slightly more. It's just a few $100s more. It's basically about $900 more than the Camry, this version of the Camry. And remember, I have done nothing. I haven't done any interesting interior, exterior packages. I haven't added any extra stuff. This is just the base version of the thing with the navigation upgrade package. That's the only upgrade. But basically that means that a Toyota Camry, which is a pretty boring, uninteresting car. I test drove one last summer. It was a 2022, not a 2023, but it's just like, it does not get you excited, believe me. It's that kind of a car. It's like, fine, it's a vehicle, it'll work. It's a Toyota, it'll probably last a good 5 or 6 or 8 years or something, a couple 100,000 miles if you want to put that kind of mileage on it. So it's a good quality car and it's going to last, but it's not very exciting. Whereas on the other hand, the Tesla Model 3, which is a much more exciting vehicle, it's the future, it's an EV, costs within spitting distance, depending on the configuration of the Toyota Camry, of the same cost. And again, believe me, if you spec out a more, you know, advanced Toyota Camry, there are XLSs and things like that, that you can get it substantially more, and it can actually be well over $40,000. So the Model 3 can be substantially cheaper than many of the options of the Toyota Camry. And then let's go ahead and click the potential savings. And so you can see this too. So why is it saying $32,290 as opposed to $36,490? They're basically tacking on $4,000 for gas saving and maintenance savings, which is a pretty reasonable thing to do. So the total cost of ownership of this vehicle is going to be substantially less than a Toyota Camry. So of course, some of this comes down to the fact that the EV is much, much cheaper to charge than it is to fill up the gas tank. If we look at the Toyota configurator, you can see the XLE let's roughly say 33 miles per gallon between the two of them. Now, obviously, if you get the hybrid, it changes the value, but you're also paying an extra $3,000 to get the hybrid version. So that increases the cost. But anyway, if you kind of rough this thing out and you assume you're going to drive 15,000 miles per year or 45,000 miles in 3 years, that's going to cost you at $3 a gallon for gas, which is pretty reasonable, I think. It's going to cost you just a bit over $4,000. It'll cost you $4,090. And if you compare that to the Tesla, if you charge at home and you have approximately the same electricity costs that we do here, it's going to cost you around $500 to charge the Tesla up for 45,000 miles. So you're saving about $3,600 in fuel costs. Plus, you don't have any maintenance. You don't have oil changes. You don't have regular maintenance on the engine. You don't have belt replacement. You don't have things like that. So you're going to save another $3,500 to $4,000 with the vehicle over the lifetime cost of the car. So basically, we're looking at sticker price pretty much parity between the two. Again, depending on how you spec out the Camry and how you spec out the Tesla, of course, as well. But within that, once we get to the price parity, the cost of ownership of the Tesla is substantially less. Plus, you get a much more exciting car. The Camry, again, is a relatively boring kind of car. It's not that exciting. It's one of those things that people have always purchased because the price was pretty reasonable. And therefore, you're made a sacrifice of like, okay, it's a reasonably priced car. I'll go ahead and buy it, even though it's not all that exciting because it doesn't cost as much money as all of these more fancy cars. But now you can get a much more exciting electric vehicle, be part of the future, have better resale value at the end, and it costs you the same amount walking out the door. In fact, probably less, because you won't have to deal with the dealerships trying to jack up prices, with underbody protection and who knows what else they always try to throw in there. But anyway, you'll probably end up walking out the door spending less on the Tesla than on the Toyota in the first place, and then the savings just increase over time. So I've done cost comparisons before, and actually you can check this out, where I've compared a Tesla Model Y to a Mazda CX-5, which is substantially less than the Model Y, and then also a BMW and a Mercedes. And at the time, with the Model Y costing significantly more money, it ended up costing as little as the Mazda CX-5, more or less, after 5 years of ownership, but it cost a lot more to purchase it. But now we've gotten to price parity, which means it costs basically the same amount to buy this car versus the other car. And over time, all you're going to be doing is saving money after you purchase this. So sticker price parity is not coming soon. It's here now, at least in the United States. And obviously every country is a little bit different with the cost of vehicles and the cost of incentives and all of that kind of stuff. But at least in the United States, you can get a car that is substantially better than the Toyota Camry for the same price. And then you will save money every single day that you drive the vehicle after you own it. So what does this mean for Tesla, for Legacy Auto, and for the consumer? Well, for Tesla, all to the good, right? For the consumer, all to the good, because if you're a smart consumer, you're going to go start shopping around and you're going to go, wait a second, I can get a Tesla for the same price as a Camry? Why would I buy a Camry? For Legacy Auto, all to the bad. And that's right now. Don't forget about the part that we talked about at the beginning, which is that Wright's Law is kind of lumpy, and we're just about to take a significant drop. Teslas are going to drop in price again very significantly once this project tile, and again, this is speculation on my part, so I could be very wrong about this, but most of us believe that this is coming to pass relatively soon. And that is that Elon Musk has said they want to reduce the manufacture cost of these vehicles by half. A few years ago, Sandy Munro tore down the Model 3 and said it would cost about $36,000 to build the vehicle. And now I'm sure it's a little bit less than that. But anyway, half of that price is $18,000 to build a vehicle, which means that Tesla could then charge $28,000 or $30,000, still make a ton of profit on it. And if you include the tax incentive also on top of that, at least in the United States, the car starts looking more like it's on the order of $20,000 for somebody to purchase. And at that point, we're not talking like, price parity anymore. We're talking about price massive difference. And at that point, you really would have to be kind of dumb not to at least look at a Tesla and say like, wow, this is a way, way better deal than purchasing an ICE car that's going to cost me a lot more money over its lifetime. And it's going to have lower resale when I want to sell it someday. So this is something that right now, a smart consumer will purchase a Tesla Model Y over a Camry. In the near future, 6 months or a year or something like that, when you can get the new version of the Model 3, and then let's not even talk about the Model Tau, which is going to be even cheaper than that. When we start looking at these sorts of price reductions, this is going to be a lot cheaper than any ICE car. And there's no way that internal combustion engine manufacturers can keep up with this price drop, because you've got Wright's Law on your side if you're an EV manufacturer and against you if you're an ICE car manufacturer. Because there's been 115 or 120 years of manufacturing ICE cars, and so you can only, squeeze out tiny little bits of efficiency in that over time. And to double the run of those vehicles, you're looking at billions of cars over all of that time, billions of gas cars. You can't double that very quickly at all. Whereas EVs have only been manufactured in the couple of million vehicles at this range. So, in 1 year, you could double that. And so you could reduce the cost of these vehicles by another 28%. But again, it's been relatively flat for the past few years. So we're looking for a big drop. It's not going to continuously just march down like this. We are going to get this, this, and this. And we're just about to hit the part where it goes down again very, very rapidly. And so again, for Tesla, which is clearly way out in the lead in manufacturing, and again, that's what Elon said would always be their competitive advantage, was their ability to manufacture. I don't know that other vehicle manufacturers, even EV vehicle manufacturers, are going to be able to keep up with this sort of radical reinvention of the factory and the cost reductions that are involved. But eventually, probably people will catch up. The thing that won't happen is you won't see internal combustion engine vehicles be able to drop in price anymore. So we've hit the point. We've hit the point where we've got some of these vehicles are the same cost. And already, even if you want to take the average cost in the United States, as opposed to looking at a Model 3 versus a Toyota Camry, if you just look at the average, already the average cost of a 300+ mile EV is cheaper than the average cost of an ICE vehicle. And so that means if you do your research and you really think about it, you will purchase an EV at this point because it's cheaper to own on top of that. But that's something where I could see people still being sort of confused at this point. Within the next year or 2 or 3 at the most, the cost to purchase an EV, or at least a Tesla EV, is going to be so much lower than comparable vehicles that are run on internal combustion engines that people would have to be complete idiots to purchase an ICE vehicle when they could get an EV for $5,000 or $10,000+ cheaper than the comparable ICE vehicle. And even while we can look to the future to see it getting even more stark, already we are at price parity, and that is pretty mind-blowing. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.